Venu sir, I think we can get started.
Thank you, Vatsar, and welcome you all to the webinar on e-invoice. And we are going to look at integration with the GST Zen. Manisha?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. So good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar on e-invoicing. As we are all aware that e-invoicing is going to mandatory for all the taxpayers with annual aggregate turnover of 10 crores with effect from 1st of October. So in this session, it's all about that how invoicing is going to change the way we are doing our businesses. And in this session, we will be talking and covering the basics of e-invoicing and how e-invoicing works with API integration, Excel and Excel integration. So if I talk a little bit about like our speaker, Mr. C.A. Venu Gopal Girla, who is an expert on GST and has contributed a lot of inputs in the drafting of various forms and rules. So before proceeding for e-invoicing, a brief introduction about GST Zen. So GST Zen provides GST compliance software consisting of the following. We have return filing for GSTR 1, 3B, 9, and 9C. We also have reconciliations and reports such as books versus 2A, 2B, 1 versus 2A versus 3B, PAN level reports, and so on and so forth. We also have a lot of other utilities like to convert JSON to Excel, GST Zen validator, and all. If I talk in numbers for GST Zen, so we have more than nearly about 30,000 users processing millions of invoices every day and 20 crore invoices in our database. Now, moving ahead, I would like to take Venu sir in charge and talk about the invoicing.
Thank you, Manisha.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So, friends, let me begin the session saying that e-invoice is definitely not, an additional burden. So there is somehow there's a myth which people think that okay, GST compliances are going up every day. With new GSTR 3B coming in and a proposed to 3B, on top of it, there is a requirement of matching input tax credit. Now suddenly this e-invoice. Should I definitely be doing business or should I handle everything is a question that comes up. So let us start understanding why e-invoicing. If you look at accounting itself as a transactions, accounting is just purely a metric. Today we are using a different ERPs wherein if one has to raise an invoice, we just select a particular item, select a customer and the rate, quantity, everything comes and I say generate invoice. So the transactions get posted to the entries respective tables automatically. We talk about AR, AP module, both order to pay, procure to pay, and order to cash, both the cycles. So there is concept of debit crediting is fading out. It is all about transaction process. Now, in midst of these, if you see the increase in the transparency in the system bringing lot of changes. Today, when you have to get a GST registration, we don't need to go to the officer. It's everything online. And the more we go digital, the ease of doing business goes up. And that's where we have been year on year, we have been going up in the ranking of ease on doing business. Not just that, the people who have successfully implemented e-invoice, They have stated that it has substantially reduced the process cost, and it also has brought the efficiency. Yeah. So on this note, I would like to say what e-invoice is. E-invoice is not definitely a digital invoice. You might be thinking that I already have a computer and I am using like an accounting software like SAP, Tally, QuickBooks, Zoho, some software, I am generating an invoice. Isn't it an invoice? The answer is no. We are doing a digital accounting, digital printing, digital invoices, but e-invoice is an underlying data that goes through the document. What we see is a printed invoice. Between two software, the printed invoice might be the same. But can I actually do an interoperability between the systems? The answer is no. Today, the data which is generated from the e-invoice, from the invoice of a system, can definitely not become a purchase in another system. But post implementation of e-invoice, the e-invoice that gets generated, be it any accounting software, it will be the same. In fact, be it any business, whether someone is selling one idli dosa, a small restaurant, to an L&T who is doing a turnkey projects, or someone is doing sale of goods, someone is doing supply of services, irrespective, the e-invoice is going to be the same for everyone. We should appreciate the NIC, GSTN and ICA for doing a beautiful design of the schema. Now, the point one has to note is the need for this. If you look at on the screen, there are different types of your power connector. Say you are traveling from India to Singapore, your charger, currently you might be in type D, and in Singapore, let's say it is type I or type J, you will not be able to work. And all that you can do is either you find a different adapter or cut the wire and put a wrapper. And your e-invoice is also like that. Today, a SAP and a Tally doesn't talk, but the e-invoice that is coming from a SAP and a Tally is going to be the same. So one will be able to easily understand and adopt the purchase and sales transaction. If I have to give you a crude way of understanding, what a common man needs to charge your laptop or a mobile is a power, and your adapter is the connection. Now, currently in India, you have different softwares which are coming in a different way. If GSTN is asking you to upload your soft copy of the data, either you will put it into PDF or a Word document or an Excel or some other format, and you upload. They will not be able to understand. So they have designed a common schema with which everyone can be talking. So that is if I have to give you the background, that is the background of the e-invoice. Some of them have sent a message that the screen is not visible. Please check. It's visible at my end. And if you are unable to if you log out and you are unable to log in, you have the session is live. It is live on the YouTube. You can also watch us live on the YouTube. Feel free to interact. Put your questions in the chat box. We will take up all the questions. Today's session is to make you aware about e-invoice provisions, and so that you will be clear how you will have to handle it. Okay. So first and foremost, e-invoice is not just new. E-invoice has been implemented past. It implemented in the 1st October 2020 for 500 crores and ago. But this is a period when we had a COVID. Now, people thought that there is no way we can go live because it's a new system and we don't know many things. But it was successfully implemented. Every stage when the e-invoice got implemented, there was a jump in the turnover. What is the latest ask? The latest ask is effective from 1st October 22. whose aggregate turnover is about 10 crores have to do e-invoice. Now, people may ask, what is aggregate turnover? The definition of aggregate turnover is sum of the all turnovers in the GST and span-based turnover. And span-based turnover in any of the financial years. मान लीजिए, if your turnover in the financial year 2021 exceeded 10 crores, all the years, including 21-22, it is below 10 crores. You still have to do e-invoice, right? So that's the e-invoice. Moving further, next, in fact, we have always a thing that we will want to do everything in the last minute. We don't want to work unless the shit hits the ceiling. There will always be people waiting that someday we will do it. And if you don't do it, there is a huge challenge. Next slide. Bharti, can you give me the access of the screen so that I can, yeah. Next slide. Let's understand the legal provisions. First and foremost, the notifications which have been which is requiring you to do it is 17/22, where your turnover has to do more than 10 crores. Okay, next slide. Yeah, we all know rule 48, where the 46 talking about the contents in the invoice, while rule 48 talks about the manner in which you issue the e-invoice. And in 48 sub-rule 4, by virtue of notification 68/2019, the government has now stated that if e-invoice is applicable to you and you are supposed to issue an invoice which the government titled as INV1. And what is INV1? That is defined under 60/2020. A schema has been given. They have said, if you are issuing any invoice other than INV1, it is not going to be a valid invoice. 48 sub-rule 5 says, if you are issuing any invoice, it is not going to be a valid invoice. And they have also said, the 48 sub-rule 1 says original to the recipient, duplicate to the transporter, triplicate to yourself. They said, you don't need multiple copies of these invoices. What does this mean? It means if e-invoice is applicable to you and you're not doing your e-invoice, the recipient is likely to be at a risk of availing input tax credit. The input tax credit to the recipient is going to be at a risky. It is definitely not going to be a smooth sale. So the customers are going to ask you a declaration that yes, you are not complying under e-invoice because it is not applicable to you. You got to make that declaration. Where do you generate that e-invoice? There is a common portal that is notified 69/2019. That is where you have to do the e-invoice. Now, there is also a question that to whom the e-invoice is applicable and to whom is not applicable. So everyone above 10 crores is applicable. However, exemption has been given to SCZ units and people who are into the business of banking, insurance, and NBFC services, who is doing a goods transport agency or passenger transport agency or admission to cinematographic films. This exemption of issuing a tax invoice has already been given in sub-rule 54. Already, rule 46 is not required. So that exemption has been continued. Now, what transactions have been covered? This slide, I want you to pay attention. I want everyone you to pay attention on this slide because this gives you more clarity. What you are seeing in the green color is where the transactions and the documents for which e-invoice is applicable. What you are seeing in the type of race is the invoice not applicable. Firstly, e-invoice is applicable only when you're making a taxable supply. That is, you're issuing a tax invoice. E-invoice is not applicable if you are using a bill of supply. So if you're doing an exempt supply, e-invoice is not applicable. Next, e-invoice is also applicable for credit notes, debit notes associated to invoice. So you may call this as e-document also. However, it is not applicable to a delivery challan or an ISD document. Likewise, E-invoice is applicable only if you make to a registered person. It could be a B2B or a B2G. Saurabh was asking, is it applicable for exports? Answer is yes. The third one is, it is applicable to only even export of goods or services. However, it is not applicable if you are making a supply to a B2C or if you are making a URD purchase or import of goods. To summarize, if you can see in the chain, if a tax invoice, which is in a green color, issued to a B2C, then the invoice is not applicable. If a tax invoice is issued to previous reference, if a tax invoice is issued to B2C, e-invoice is not applicable. Why? E-invoice is applicable if the tax invoice is issued to a B2B. Likewise, if you are making an exempt supply and issuing a bill of supply, if the exempted supply is made to a registered person, e-invoice is not applicable because it is bill of supply. To understand this maze and to simplify it, look at your GST R1. Wherever you are doing a line-wise reporting, table 4, B2B, 5 is B2C large, you can ignore. Table 6A, exports, 6B, supply to SEZ, 6C, deemed exports, e-invoice is applicable. Table 7, B2C, table 8, where you are doing a bulk data entry, e-invoice not applicable. Again, back table 9, where you are doing a debit credit, e-invoice is applicable. So wherever there is a line-wise reporting obligation in GST R1, e-invoice is applicable. Now, in export of goods and services, you might be doing a dollar invoices, but while you are reporting in GST R1, you are reporting in INR values. So e-invoice will be in INR value because the data that you entered in the e-invoice will be reported to the government. Next slide. Now, let us understand the high-level information or a procedural information, starting with registration. Government has given 3 portals. Now the trial portal is not required. It was there earlier. So there is a e-invoice API sandbox. If you want to do a testing how the e-invoice works, integration for yourself, please register yourself on the sandbox and you can do the testing. But make sure after the testing is done, you got to generate an e-invoice through the e-invoice1.gst.go.in. There are going to be 10 multiple sites. Right now, it is e-invoice 1 maintained by NIC. If people are in the waiting room, you may share the link of the YouTube. Because
yes, sir. I am sharing it with them continuously.
All right, thanks. Yeah. The next thing comes is the other utilities that they have given. You can already see list of people who are already generating e-invoice. You can enter your GST number and check whether e-invoice has been enabled to you or not. You may say that, see, I am using a software which is internally developed. Government has given a free utilities, or you may say that I'm not using any software. So the government has given an Excel-based utilities. They have also given something called Japan. So generation of e-invoice, the portal which you can use through a mobile app or a website also. If someone is issuing an e-invoice to you, you can use the QR code reader which is given to check whether that has been a valid invoice or not. If someone is sending you a JSON file, you can just copy the JSON file and verify that whether it is a signed invoice or not. So there are additional utilities government has given, and all of them you can find in the help and the other services on the e-invoice trial portal. Moving further, the process, how it works. Here is the schematic view, high level, how it has been given. But I'll just skip this and I'll explain it. There is a little animated way I can easily explain. Imagine you are a supplier, you are issuing an invoice. So all that you will do is you will push this invoice to the GSTN system through different register. What does the registrar do? Registrar connects to his portal. He will generate an e-invoice. He will connect to the GSTN portal. He will update the GSTR1 and the e-waybill. And there are third-party utilities which have been enabled to give you invoice-based financing, all those things. More importantly, what happens is the recipient is going to get the credit on a near real time. So I am making a supply, it is going to GSTR1 in a near real time. The recipient would also be able to see in his 2A. So the confidence to the buyer will go up. And today they have given APIs where the buyers can also automate their books of accounts because the e-invoice is standard. So the transaction posting can also be automated, right? So this is the broader process of the e-invoice. Now, there are certain terms and definitions. It is mandatory. One has to understand. There are 4 different pieces, starting with IRN. IRN stands for invoice reference number. It's a 64-digit alphanumeric number. It gets generated by a combination of the following 4 items: GST number, financial year, the document type, and the document number. It is only for computers, not for human beings. Reason, we can't remember our 13-digit bank account number. So where is the position of 64-digit unique number alphanumeric? But having obtained this number, it makes this document unique, which states that you are complying with the e-invoice. The second definition which one should be knowing is IRP. IRP is the key in whole of this process. If you look at this, the taxpayer uploads his e-invoice JSON to the IRP. What does IRP do? He does a deduplicacy check. Checks whether it is the first time reporting of the invoice. If yes, he will make an entry in his register. And if you want an e-waybill, he will generate an e-waybill parallelly. Again, we will show you a live demo of it. If you want to have the e-waybill at a later point, he will only give you an e-invoice with an option to generate an e-waybill at a later point. And the IRP updates this data to the GSTR1, the GST common portal, and gives you an acknowledgement. Now, if I have to sum up, what is the change in the process? In today, you are invoicing and issuing the document to the customer. After the implementation of e-invoice, before issuing to the customer, you will report it to the IRP, get an acknowledgement of it, and send it back. Now you may ask that, isn't it putting a hard stop on my business and it is going to become a challenge? The answer is no. Even though it might appear, but if you notice, the IRP does this process in a fraction of seconds, in nanoseconds. Again, we will see it in live. First IRP is the NIC. NIC is the first IRP who is doing this. There are second IRP and the others getting onboarded. IRP is going to have the data only for 24 hours. So if you have to do cancellation or anything, you have to do within that period. IRP is not going to have services of emailing the data to your recipients, storing the invoices for you to a retrieval for a later period. Answer is no. IRP is not going to do any of those services. So you got to take care of your invoices. Now I said IRP is going to give you some response. If you look at that response, this is how it will be: an acknowledgement date, acknowledgement number, IRN, the signed invoice and signed QR code. If you are asking for the e-waybill, it will also give you e-waybill details. So the next thing you should be knowing is the QR code. This is the QR code you will be printing on the invoice and issuing to the customer. So what does this QR code contains? QR code contains a high-level information about the invoice. When you scan this QR code, it will give you that these are the details of an invoice. It's not going to give you a complete invoice, but it will give you invoice number, few parameters. Just to know an authenticity of an invoice, yes, this is from the system. So this is what you will get. The QR code which was shown in the previous screen, when you scan it, you will be getting the details: who is the buyer, who is the seller, what is the document date, number, and the document types, how many line items are there, and what is the total invoice value. This is a high level information that will be generated. Where does GST Zen come into the play? GST Zen, whether it is a Tally or a ERP, we have an integration process. The data from your ERP will be converted into a format which is JSON. So like Tally gives an XML, but that is interpreted and converted back into a JSON which is required by the government portal. And the data from the government portal is fetched back, both QR code and IRN, and it is updated back into the user's ERP. So GST then acts as a middle layer in terms of understanding your data and presenting it the way the government wants. Now you might have some FAQs while the e-invoice is being generated. The first and foremost thing, we shouldn't never lose sight of the big picture in doing the transaction. Biggest mistakes which I have noticed is after doing a successful implementation of the e-invoice, from the sandbox, people don't even migrate to the live portal. People also lose sight that saying that I have already issued the invoice. The cancellation window is only 24 hours. How do I handle? How do I handle if there are changes that are happening in the books of accounts after 24 hours? How do I file my returns? Or I have requested for e-waybill, but I did not move the goods. So all these are very important. Let us see one by one how we are going to handle it. First, when should I generate and issue an e-invoice? It is not a separate question, one has to answer it. Currently, whenever you are issuing the invoice, you will be issuing at the same time. For example, if a customer is standing across the counter, you have a POS machine, you will be doing e-invoice and issue the invoice. What should be the contents? The same contents, there's no difference, just that you will print a QR code. Other than that, nothing. So there's section 12, 13 read with section 31, there is no change. All that where e-invoice is applicable, you will be doing e-invoice. For some of you, it may sound theory. What is that e-invoice? I'll also show a demo. The next question people will have is the contents which I have to print on the invoice. The next slide. The contents that needs to be there in the invoice. On the invoice, you need to have the QR code. Rule 46 of rule R has been amended saying that QR code has to be there in the invoice. And you don't need to print actually the invoice. The 48 sub rules, it says that a digital requirement is sufficient. The previous slide. People also have a doubts on e-waybill. Previous slide, please. People have doubt on the e-waybill. Now, is e-waybill required even after the e-invoice? Answer is yes. E-waybill is governed under Rule 138. E-invoice is governed under Rule 48. So, wherever e-waybill is applicable, you have to do e-invoice and e-waybill. The relaxation they have given is you don't need to print the e-waybill again. The QR code which is there on the invoice has the contents of the e-waybill also. So the proper officer who is intercepting the vehicle will be able to understand whether the e-waybill has been generated or not. Next, you will also have to be making sure that if you want to cancel an invoice, you got to cancel the e-waybill first. Only then you can cancel the invoice. You also have been given an option to generate e-waybill now or at a later point. These are the various points that you should be knowing it. From the recipient perspective, IRP is not going to send the e-invoice to the recipient. You will continue to send the e-invoice or invoice to the recipient the way you have been doing it. IRP is only purely going to give an acknowledgement JSON along with the PDF if you want. We are told that the government is building a system to send e-invoices, but as of now, it is not there. So that means you have to digitally sign the e-invoice or physically sign the e-invoice the way you are doing, and you have to issue to the customers. Common questions will also come. For example, today is holiday and for some reason, the accountant did not come. I was unable to do the e-invoice. Can I do it tomorrow? Perfectly fine. So is the backdated e-invoicing permitted? As of now, system is permitting backdated e-invoice because it's a new technology. People are adopting it. So system will permit it. The next question that comes is, can I do it once in a month? The answer is no. You cannot do it once in a month. Every day you have to do. The recommended time is 48 hours. So that's what I would recommend. Now, after generating the invoice, can I cancel it? Yes, you can cancel it. Within what time? Only 24 hours. After 24 hours? No. The data is not with the registrar. Registrar purges the data within 24 hours. So you cannot do anything after 24 hours. You may say, I have realized a mistake after 24 hours. No worries. Don't report it in your GSTR1. Cancel it in your books, but do not report it in your GSTR1. People may also have this question that, okay, I have cancelled the invoice. Can I reuse it? No. Once cancelled, you cannot reuse it. Next, can I amend the invoice? No, there is no possibility of amending the invoice. What will be the errors, likely errors? The likely errors that will come up is you might have used a wrong HSN. GST Zen has a validator to show you the right HSN. The PIN code might not be matching. So GSTN has already, the IRP portal has already listed what are the various PIN codes that are available. So you should be able to do the proper PIN code match. If the recipient GST is cancelled, again, the status will be available. Please note, you cannot make any errors while generating the invoice, which are system related issues. For example, totaling error. It's obviously expected that you do correct total. But system is not going to say that when you are selling the computers and you are putting HSN as 8607, but while you instead of that you are putting it as 0409. System is not going to say that you are using a wrong HSN. System is not going to say you are using a wrong rate of tax. It is not going to validate what is the amount that you should do. None of these validations are there. That is why IRP is going to process this as super fast, because he is only acknowledging and giving you back the documents. And using Zen, you will be able to automate and fix any of these errors. Let's go to the schema related understanding. I'll quickly tell you what the schema related is. Firstly, you should have an ability to prepare an e-invoice as per the schema. Government has given the schema. As per the notified schema, you should be able to do the e-invoice. And you should also have, if you are saying that you are going live, you should have an ability to build a communication channel for integrating with the IRP. And once the data comes, you should be able to send it to the customers. If your suppliers are sending it, you should be able to accept the details. So you should build your internal ability to do this. Next. We will do a live demo. What are all the process that happens in the GST Zen when using a GST Zen, using a ERP or an accounting software. The invoice details, firstly, it will be validated even before sent to the government portal. The valid e-invoice details will be sent to the IRP, which is the government portal. We will download the IRN, digital signature and QR code, and you have an option to automatically email and PDF the invoice to the customers. And using the integration solutions, the details are saved back, which is sent from the IRN into your ERP. So you can see the whole chain. This is what is built on GST Zen, which will be easily, you will be able to consume and use it. The data has to be built in a proper structured way. We call it as schema. Schema has various sections. Instead of explaining it, let me show you what does various sections means. Imagine your invoice. Next slide. Imagine a physical invoice. In the invoice, there are various blocks. We call that as sections. Some sections are mandatory. Some sections are optional. Whatever is mandatory, you can see it in a red color, which means you need to have at least one line of the information in these sections. Apart from this, there are totally 133 fields in the schema. So there are only 28 mandatory informations. Next slide. You will also have other sections like your dispatch address, shipping address. These are all optional. And if you see the schema has a cardinality where the number of occurrences, will the occurrence be one occurrence or multiple occurrence? So totally there are 45 sections, 133 fields, but you only have 28 mandatory fields. You have only 28 mandatory fields. Next. We can skip this. We have some additional information. All the fields which are mandatory are listed. Anyhow, we will be sharing you the copy of presentation to the registered email ID. So coming back, what GST Zen, how it can help you. There are multiple features that are available. First, there is a simple Excel connector. Bharat is going to show a demo of it, where you have your own Excel, or you can download the GST Zen Excel and fill the data, press of a button, invoice will be done. Or you have your own proprietary software. You have a proprietary software. So then there is a database integration application. Our application will be connecting to your proprietary software and do all the jobs. So you don't need to be worrying about building again an e-invoice suite into your proprietary software. All that is available. If you have a standard ERP like a Tally or SAP, we have a solution where in a press of a button, everything happens. Today, Tally Prime has released an e-invoice, an inbuilt feature. Even SAP, SAP, every standard of accounting applications have brought e-invoice as a feature. But if you are using older versions of the software, you have not renewed them. So those like ERP 9, you are in still version 6.3 or 7.2 or 8 or 9 of ERP 9, then you will be able to use our connector. So where are our connectors? We have ERP connectors for Tally, SAP, Oracle, NAV, other ERPs. In fact, you can use our billing software where you can do a direct billing data entry in the our system. So we are going to show you a demo of how the whole process happens, and we will be showing the multiple applications, a demo of the applications, how it is going to happen. Let's start with the Tally. We'll have Bharati explaining you on how using an Excel integration, and we will take Q&A if any. Let me just share with you how a Tally integration works. Here is the standard Tally, all right? And why I'm showing ERP 9 is in ERP 9, the Tally did not give you the feature of e-invoice. So if you are using GST Zen solution, GST Zen is going to give you an additional button. Using this, you will be able to generate an e-invoice. So let me show you the process. Let's say we are going to do a data entry, and let me do a sale invoice for 31st August, which is of last month. And so I'm just creating one sale entry, and let me take one interstate transaction and pick some item. So I just picked some item and some GST. Now, if I want an e-waybill, I'll also show you how e-waybill happens. Let me say e-waybill is required. All that I will be doing is I'll just enter the vehicle number. I'm not touching anything. I'm only entering a vehicle number, a valid vehicle number. And right now you can see all this data, all this information, it is empty. Okay. So let me say a demo e-invoice. Please note, we are doing the e-invoice dated 31st August, but today my system date is 7 September 3:44 p.m. right? So I am saving this invoice. I am saving this invoice 3,45,000 rupees. Now, in GST Zen, the add-on, there are multiple utilities. I'm going to B2B e-invoice. The e-invoice register will help me to see list of invoices where it is generated in a color code. You can see something in blue, only invoice generated, green invoice with e-way bill, and something which is in black. Right now, 31st August, that 3,45,000 rupees is the last invoice. It is in black color, which means e-invoice is not generated. It is pending. I can see going in e-invoice pending. You can see there is one invoice which is pending. You can have 100 invoices. So there is a makeup checker. Someone does the data entry. Once the data entry is done, so approver can just select this invoice and say, look at this. Press of a button. I'll say upload. So the data from Tally went to GST Zen portal, it validated, went to the IRP portal, it obtained the e-invoice and brought it back to the GST Zen and Tally. You know, everything happened in fraction of seconds. You can see the invoice vanished. Where did it vanish? I'll come to invoice register and you can see it is there with the green color, the one which we entered 3,45,000. You can automatically see the details of the IRN acknowledgement number. You can see clearly the acknowledgement date as 7th September, which is today, and it is generated at 3:44. It also automatically calculated the distance between Bangalore to Haryana. It calculated 2,166 kilometers, and it has given the e-way bill also. And when you print the invoice, when you print this invoice, let me just print this invoice. So you can see the invoice automatically got printed. The invoice automatically got printed with a QR code on the top. You can see the QR code is there on the top, and it is showing your e-way bill invoice number and the e-way bill with the IRN and acknowledgement details. All these details are automatically fetched, and on print of the invoice you are able to see. Your e-way bill is valid. It is generated on 7th September and valid till 18th September. Everything has been done, taken care by the system automatically. This is the power of technology and the power of automation. I will also show you a demo using Excel. Bharti, can you show the demo using Excel? Sanjay Gupta is asking, can we see it on YouTube later or no, not able to continue? Yes, yeah, this link will be available. You will be able to see anytime. Bharti? Yeah. So I have my colleague Bharti who will be doing a demo of how e-invoice can be done using our billing software and the Excel utility. Yes, Bharti. Okay. Bharti, you are not audible.
Hello, am I audible, sir? Okay. So I'll be starting with the demo of Excel. So this is GST.
Volume is little low.
So you select, what I'm doing is I'll be generating an e-invoice now. So I select the GST number for which I want to generate the e-invoice. Go to e-invoicing and you have various options available. So you can go through your Excel where we map the Excel given by the customer to the software, and this is the standard Excel we provide. So I have already downloaded this Excel. and input some information. So all the columns which are in bold are mandatory fields, rest are optional. So the mandatory sections have to be provided, and it is as per a user's discretion if they want to provide the information in the optional fields as explained by Venu sir earlier. So now I have input the information. Now I'm uploading it to the Excel.
So either you
Okay,
can
so my
have
file
your
is
Excel
uploaded.
or the Excel which is given, which Bharti is showing, you can have that Excel. So both are permitted.
It will just take a few seconds for the invoices to load. Okay, so now you can see I have these invoices that I uploaded. If I check the summary, I uploaded 9 invoices with a taxable value of 1,89,675, and these are the taxes. It will also show you the date range, and if you want to check the invoices, you can see them here. Now, if we look at the symbol here, it shows a yellow circle. That means e-invoice has not yet been generated. So if I look at the PDF of this invoice, there is no QR code and no IRN. Okay. So now I am clicking on upload e-invoices to generate the e-invoice for these documents I have uploaded. So as per the notification, the e-invoices are getting generated. Okay. So now all of them have been generated. Now if I look at the PDF, I can see that there is a QR code, there's IRN, acknowledgement date, and number. So I can open the invoice here and also see from which portal is it generating the e-invoice. So this has been generated through Sandbox. This is the IRN and acknowledgement date and number. So if I want to generate the e-waybill, I can generate the e-waybill from here, and I can also cancel it. Okay, so now the e-invoice has been cancelled. The other way of generating the e-invoice through Zen is through the billing software that we have. So from sales register, I can create a new invoice. Okay. Provide the document number. It will use the same series which you have given. Select the date, document type, supply type, and select the recipient. So if you already provide the details as in the customer master, these details will be loaded automatically. And you can also have a product master where you can save the products and provide their unit price. If you want to change the quantity, let's change it to 3, and the tax rates and everything have been saved. I can also add a line item over here if I want, and then save the invoice. Once it is saved, you can review and generate the e-invoice from here. So e-invoice is now generated. You can see the IRN. The QR code can be seen in the PDF. And all the other details are there in the PDF. Okay. So now moving on to APIs. So all the developers, they can test our APIs to provide all the requirements for testing through this article. So you can also review through a video. We have provided the schema, the sample e-invoice JSONs, and you can also check out our sample codes in various programming languages. So now I'm going to be generating an e-invoice through Postman. So we have provided a token which can be used for the purpose of testing, and all the seller GST numbers that can be used for each state.
This is purely for the programmers.
Yeah, so the authorization would be API type would be API key, the key would be token, and the value would be the API token provided in this article over here. Okay, so I've given this, and in the body, I have given the JSON. So this JSON, I've already generated for this. I'm just changing the invoice number and the date. So all the fields which are in red are fixed, and the values against them will change as per the invoice. So this type is invoice. If I'm generating a credit note, it would be CRN. And if it is a debit note, it would be DBN. Okay. And these are the seller details. Then these are the buyer details. Val details are the totals for the invoice, and the item list. I only have one item. So it is containing only one serial number here. If there are multiple line items, those would be present, held within the item list. Now I'm sending it to the portal. It only takes it only takes a few seconds. I've gotten back the response. IRN generated. This is the IRN, acknowledgement date, acknowledgement number, e-waybill details. If I had provided e-waybill details, it would have also generated. You can also get the signed QR code from here and the signed invoice. Plus, in the response, we also provide the QR code as an image plus the PDF. So both can be, if you take this link and paste it in your browser, you would get the PDF of the e-invoice generated. Similarly, if you paste the link of the QR code in your browser, you would get the QR code as an image. So now moving back, so we'll be taking the questions now.
So if you have any questions, please do ask the questions, or you can put your questions in the chat. You can raise hand. We will allow you to unmute, and you can ask the question. So I have got a couple of questions, which I like. Those which have come, we have answered it. And accounts, yes, ma'am. You can. You are unmuted. You can ask. Please ask the question. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Shashidhar here.
Yeah.
Actually, we have two offices. One in SEZ and other is non-SEZ.
Correct.
So, is it required to generate e-invoicing?
Yeah. So the unit you have, the GST unit you have in DTA, you have to do e-invoice, and the unit which is there in SEZ, e-invoice is not required.
Okay, but excuse me. This SEZ only crosses the threshold, not the other one.
Can you come up again?
It's the same single entity with two locations, one in SEZ and another is non-SEZ.
Of course, yes. So you will have the separate registration number for the SEZ unit and the DTA unit. The GST in the DTA unit has to do e-invoice, and the GSTN of SEZ unit need not do e-invoice.
But that non-SEZ is not the out of threshold. It is very less.
Now, let's say unit 1 is doing a turnover of 5 crores, unit 2 is doing turnover of 6 crores. Both the units are less than 10 crores, but combined they have crossed 10 crores. So e-invoice is applicable even if you are doing a 5 rupee sale also. to a B2B.
Oh, okay. So now for SEZ not required, non-SEZ I'll have to generate e-invoicing.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Got it. Thank you, sir.
Hi, this is Nishit Ambalia from Nirman Projects.
Hi.
We are a construction company and
Yes, please.
we are specialized construction. So, our invoices are getting approved by the clients once they check the quantity and material. So once I submit.
Your voice is not clear, Nirman.
Hello, now is it clear? Hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a construction company and our clients are majority petroleum companies. So once we submit the invoice, the client is checking the quantity of the items we have utilized and mentioned in the invoice. So if after submission of invoice, if there is any changes in amount, then whether we have to entire invoice to be cancelled or what?
Yes. So once an invoice is generated, you cannot edit, amend anything. The concept of amendment is not there. So you got to cancel the invoice and issue a fresh invoice.
Understand. And once the invoice is uploaded positively, and if it is cancelled, then also it is uploaded automatically in GSTR1, right?
Yes. Once you do it, this data gets automatically uploaded to GSTR1. Please note, cancellation is only within 24 hours.
Okay. After that, it cannot be cancelled.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is invoice required for persons who is dealing exclusively B2C? Answer is no.
I have a quick question.
Yes. Yes. Yes, Sharada. Yes, please.
So you mentioned that APIs can be created through your software itself. Is it possible also to create APIs directly for the portal itself so that automated e-invoicing can be generated?
I lost your voice. I could not hear. Request you to repeat the question.
Okay, so APIs be created directly for auto generation of e-invoicing. Can we link it with that portal itself directly, or do we have to go through your software only?
I request you to repeat the question again. Bharti, did you get the question?
Yes, may I answer here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so if your turnover is above 500 crores, you can directly link it to the NIC portal. But if it is below 500 crores, you have to go through a third party. It is not necessary that you go through GST Zen, but you'll have to go through some party, a third party, to link it to the NIC portal.
Okay. And so let's say, since we are looking at selling the software in the market itself, how can we become those third parties? Is there a possibility for that?
You either have to be registered as an ERP or a GSP.
Registered as an ERP supplier on the portal itself, right?
Yes.
Okay, and can you suggest how that can be done? Is it a possible?
No, sir. No,
you don't
sir.
have an idea. And then in that particular case, we can go ahead with associating with your company so that we can provide the API through your software itself to our clients, correct?
Yes, that is possible.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, there is a question. If I'm registered for e-waybill, should I again register for myself for e-invoicing? The answer is no. E-invoice portal you will be able to log in using e-waybill credentials, but it is a different portal, not the e-waybill portal. It's a different portal. I am working in a processing firm. We are doing job work in a day. We are generating more than 100 bills. Then is it necessary for 100 e-invoices? Yes. Each bill, even it is a 1 rupee invoice, you need to do e-invoice. When can I generate an e-invoice for export of the goods? So Gautam, whenever you are issuing an invoice to the customer, you will be doing an invoice at that point in time. What would be the new invoice serial number for introducing e-invoice first time? There is no separate serial number. You will continue to use your old serial number, which is there. You will continue using that serial number. If we need to cancel the invoice after 24 hours, can we cancel in our books? And is there an option to remove in GSTR1 while filing the following month? Madhusudan, yes. You can cancel the invoice in your books. Please remove that in GSTR1. Update the table 13 of GSTR1 accordingly. Kasturi is asking, can you give a demo in e-invoice portal? Kasturi, e-invoice portal do not have a login directly. You have to use an Excel utilities and generate an e-invoice, upload the JSON manually. Shah is asking how to integrate GST Zen with the Tally ERP9. I request you to get in touch with our support, either any of the phone numbers, either on WhatsApp or email. So our team will connect you back how you can do the integration and what are the fees, everything that the team will take care. If the total turnover is more than 20 crores, question by Ishan, and the taxable turnover is only 2 crores, is the invoice applicable? Yes, for those 2 crores, the invoice is applicable. Question by Ajay, is invoice required along with the tax invoice or both are required? Ajay, on your regular invoice, you will print the QR code and issue it. You will not print two documents. Okay, we have answered this question. How many hours after we can generate an invoice after getting a normal invoice? Ashish, I didn't get your question, but before issuing the invoice to the customer, you got to have an invoice. Imagine the process in the e-invoices, how you are putting a seal and signature before you giving it to the customer. You are also getting an acknowledgement from the government on that. Think that as a process. So it is an additional step that got introduced. So on your paper, your stationery, your invoice, you will putting additional seal signature content on the invoice. That's all about e-invoice.
Venu sir, we are not able to hear you.
I think he might be having some internet issues. He's not in the participants.
Venu sir, you are on mute, sir.
Yeah, as I said in the initial slide, as we are in 7th September, please do not wait till end of the month thinking that, okay, we have a lot of time. Some of you are asking some basic questions as to how to do it after the demo. It indicates that somewhere you did not get clarity as to how do I do it, right? So do not wait till then. If possible, you can do the invoice from tomorrow.
Venu sir, I think we lost you again. We are not able to hear you. Venu sir. Hello. Okay, we have a question about how to get and use GST Zen and Tally ERP. Our coordinates are available on the screen. Please reach out to us either via phone, or you can send an email to support@gstzen.in, and we can support you with generating e-invoices through Tally ERP. Explain using the same credentials of e-waybill to e-invoicing. The e-waybill credentials can be used to create an account in the NIC portal, sir. But for e-invoicing, you have to create an API user for every GST number. So in order to log into the NIC portal, you can use the e-waybill credentials. Is it mandatory to attach e-sign in software? In the invoice, it is mandatory to only have the IRN number and the QR code for it to be considered as an e-invoice. The digital signature is not mandatory. Bharti, please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it is the invoice is automatically assumed to be
Sorry,
signed. Yes.
Okay, I got disconnected. What was the question, Vatsa?
If it's mandatory to attach
Vatsa, what was the question?
If it is mandatory to attach the e-sign in the software, sir.
Yes. So just because you are doing e-invoice doesn't mean that you don't need a digital signature. You will continue to issue the invoice with either digitally signed or manually signed. You've got to do it with the signature. You are establishing that this is a document generated by your side. You will have to do the way currently you are doing. Will continue to do the process. There's no change. The only change is you are just putting additional QR code in the invoice. That's all. Any other questions that were not answered? All right. So the coordinates are here, and feel free to get in touch. Our number is 7406441122, and you can write to us support@gstzen.in. Thank you for attending the session. We will share you with the presentation copy on your registered email ID, and you want to demo of it, you can just reach out to the team. Looking at your software, they can integrate and do a demo. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vatsa. Thank you, Bharati.
Thank you, sir.